Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today. Now, let's pass the mic to your MC, Letty Lundquist, to kick off this journey of enduring inspiration.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode with the Marathon Champions podcast, the podcast with Benji Durden, Ron Tabb, and Bill Rogers. Today, we're going to play part 3 for you of Talking with the Dillons, so please enjoy.
Billy, you were going to ask a question there. What were you going to ask?
I was just wondering, Benji, since you did snowshoeing and Patty, you did, I went up to the top of my driveway once. I thought I was going to try it, and then I said, no, I'm just going to run. You know, I was always resistant to changing and everything. But do you think states like, well, Colorado, Minnesota, look at the top runners that have come out of those states, you know, over the years. Do you think that they, as kids, they cross-country skied and or snowshoed, and that really built their cardio? Then, they did both. Then they go to
our kids did both. We had snowshoes for the kids. They snowshoed, and we had cross-country skis. We still have them.
Yeah.
But that's a good question. I bet they did, especially if the parents were adventuresome.
Well, I know people that did do both, that did well. I mean, look at Barney Klecker. He was he was an animal on snowshoes.
And their son.
And his son Joe, who's
Joe's doing great.
Joe Klecker,
So I mean, I think any cardiovascular activity helps cardiovascular activities. And I mean, I cross-country skied during my low running years, and I think it helped keep me fit. I raced one race, and it was pathetic. I just didn't have the form, and form is very important for this.
I think not only cardiovascular wise, but if you're active, just like even casual running, you have good days and bad days. And same thing with another sport that's cardio sport, cross country skiing and snowshoeing. You still have your head in the game. You still have, you got to get out there. You have to be consistent, and if you're going to race, you have to kind of do your workouts.
So,
hey, Danny, when you lived in Eugene, did you ever go downhill snow skiing?
Not, and I gave up my downhill skiing story is that when we were stationed on Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska, the Air Force owns a ski slope on that base. And so when I would go to school, there was a shuttle bus that would take you to the base, to the base of the ski slope. So I could bring my skis to school and put them in my locker. I bought a pair of skis that were a little bit too small for me, so I could fit them in my locker. And for 50 cents, you could buy a lift pass. And so I would ski after school every day, do my homework at the lodge, the base lodge, but when I got down to New England and I found out that you had to pay this ridiculous amount of money to get a lift pass, I was like, forget it, not my sport. We have no money. I have all these brothers and sisters, and if I was to ask my parents for the kind of money that it takes to go skiing, they'd all flip out.
If I discovered solemn skiing while I was looking, discovered running, I would have been a downhill skier. When I moved to Vermont, this Wednesdays was resident day, and you could ski at any slope for free. And I lived at the base of Mount Bromley. So of course, I started skiing. I loved it. I loved it.
I love the speed of it.
And that's quick. And you have to make decisions quick, and you're alert, and it's boom, boom, boom. And I thought, wow.
You know who's really good at downhill skiing is at Nate Gordon. I went with Dave and Alan Sharsu. And
I don't know if you remember Dennis Simonitis. He went on to be a great Masters runner, but he moved out. He left. He loved skiing so much. But I used to train with him quite a bit in Massachusetts too before he moved out to Utah. And because he loved skiing, but he was a very, very good skier. So I the few times that I did go skiing in New England, I think I went with Dennis.
Yeah.
And I live next door to some great ski areas, and I've never downhill skied in my life.
Oh, No, it's fun.
I found it.
It's
It's
fun.
It's dangerous though.
At
'cause,
this,
Oh,
at this
yeah.
age, I'm not going to start because I break
yeah,
too.
it's man, I had some nasty falls. I decided that's probably not the best thing for me to be doing.
Yeah.
Because
I've broken a lot of bones, but never skiing, fortunately.
yeah.
How did you break them?
Oh.
I fell off ladders. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff.
Cycling.
Cycling, with the reflex when you're in a bike race and you feel yourself going down, the reflex is you're going to put your hands up.
Yeah.
As you're going over the handlebars, you're doing your Superman dive, and you land hands first on the pavement. What that does, it brings all the force into your collarbones. So when I that's why I gave up crit racing. I loved the road races. You could get away from the pack a little bit, but I was a breakaway specialist and a king of the mountain guy. Because I brought my cardiovascular and my slim build into bike racing. So
But you had strong legs.
I had strong legs. I was very unpopular on the bike racing team because I joined NEBC, one of the top bike racing clubs in New England, right after I had just finished 8th in the Boston Marathon a couple of years earlier than that, a couple of years before that. And so I had some good cardiovascular fitness still. And I went out to and won the club time trial. And the guys on the team were really angry with me because they said, look, this guy's going to want to win races. And they said, you can't win races. What we need you to do is get in the pack and lead out our guys that have been on the team for, 8, 9, 10 years. And your job is going to be the domestique to kind of lead these guys out in races. And whenever they tell you to get in front and pull to kind of close a gap or, to start a breakaway, that's going to be your job.
And they could draft behind you.
And they would draft. Yeah. So my job was to let the more senior riders on the team draft off me and get away from the pack. So anyway, that was my little spell with bike racing. And then, so in the end I was like, the time trialing really suits me because everybody's starting 30 seconds apart. Nobody's drafting off of anybody. If you're drafting off of somebody during the time trial, it's because, you're drafting off a slow person. What are you doing drafting off of them for? Because if you catch somebody that started 30 seconds ahead of you, you better just
cap races.
Yeah.
We did that on Cambridge Memorial Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've tried so many different sports and I love them all, but my older brother was the real athlete. He was varsity basketball. And even though he was on the track team, he was teaching tennis lessons to the tennis team, for crying out loud. He was just good at every sport he tried. And the only thing that I could beat him at running. And I was like, that's going to be my sport.
What did you run the mile in at Providence College and thereafter? Weren't you?
Well, my PR in the mile isn't that I wasn't really much of a mile. I don't know if you remember this race. There was a mile at the BC track, that oversized track.
He wasn't there.
Oh yeah, okay, but the New England TAC meet at Boston College one year.
81.
I had been training with Bickford and Tommy Radcliffe and a bunch of those guys out in the Wellesley area. And we're out on a training run, and a bunch of them got together. They said, "Oh, this mile is shaping up to be a pretty good field." And Seven was coaching Bickford and myself at the time, and they said, somebody could go under 4. And I was like, the idea of a sub 4 minute mile for somebody like me, a 10K guy, not really in the realm of my thought process. But so I was like, well, I'm going to do it because I'm trying to get ready for the pre-classic, the 5K out in Eugene, and probably a good tune-up. So I get in the race, right? And I'm expecting like Cullinane and all these guys that are mile specialists to take the thing out. I ran the first lap in like 61 or something like that. And and then I tried to get people to go by me. I pulled out into the second lane. Nobody would pass me. Nobody would go by. And so I ended up leading that whole first 3/4 of the race around that oversized track. Nobody went by me. And I could feel them all loading up like they were all just going to sprint by me in the last 100. And I held them all off.
I saw that race.
It was a slow time because nobody took the lead. I was like, it was 4:04. It was 4:04, but nobody. I led every step, and I was just like, I was so disappointed because
picture.
Yeah, Jack Welch
But
yeah, you can see my face. I'm just beaming, smiling, and Vic is, you see Vic is mad as hell because he's like, there's no way I'm letting Dan Dillon outkick me.
So you've got some fast twitch, I'd say.
A little bit, a little bit.
You've got some.
Right
but you're a hard trainer. You're a hard trainer.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was trying to come back, I met Danny in the in the fells. Like at 6 a.m. I was like, oh my gosh, there's another. I've been running there for a couple of months without seeing anybody, and then there's this runner, and I was kind of nervous. It was Danny, so I did make sure when I was at your store, I made sure that the runners knew that I was running and training with Dan Dillon because he trained so hard that I must be in good shape.
We know he's for real, so you got to be for real, you know?
Yeah, I know, right? But it didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah.
So, Bill, how long did Coach Squires coach you? Or did you follow his program? Did you write your own program? I know you had
Coach Squires was a world-class miler from Notre Dame and a great high school miler, one of the best in the country. Went to Notre Dame on a scholarship, but the Greater Boston Track Club was kind of started by Bob Seveny, who's been mentioned many times here in this conversation, who is a Vietnam vet and a very interesting guy, coached at Bentley College. And somehow or other, he and
Jack McDonald, right?
Jack McDonald.
Yeah, Jack McDonald got together and started brainstorming. And Jack McDonald was about a 4 flat mile or two, really
flat
dude. And he and Bob somehow or other brainstormed the birth of the Greater Boston Track Club. A bunch of guys. We don't want to retire. We want to keep running. Why stop now? And so and I don't know who knew Coach Squires. Coach Squires is from Wakefield, Mass area. And
he was at Bow State.
He was coaching Boston State College.
Yeah, he was coaching there, Bow State.
Yeah.
And he got recruited. He wasn't paid anything. He did it
No.
for love of the sport. He loved it so much we all could feel it. This was the deal. And he motivated us. And he didn't work us too hard, but he left the door open. You know, I think he sensed some of us were going to be marathoners, but we also had sprinters. I think we had
Bill Clark was a hurdler. We had
that went to the Milrose Games down Racciato, a bunch of really good athletes. And so we must have had like 50, 60 people. And Squires, I don't know, he was a genius in a certain way, but you could feel that coming from him, his heart, you know, he believed in us. And that's what I think running is really about, the people that are lucky enough to find the sport. Does someone believe in you, you know, to back you?
Did Bill write your program, your workouts, or was it a combination of?
He tried.
I'm sorry?
He's out of control.
That's a good question. Tell him, Bill. Tell him what he did.
Well, yeah, he used to write stuff down in napkins, and he would speak to you in almost a second language. His jargon was. He was really
boom, Bob.
Yeah, he had a certain language, and we all just really admired him in a unique way, because we had coaches earlier in our lives, and I was lucky I had good coaches, but they're all a little different. And so Billy, you know, having that psychological support is everything. I think that's everything, you know. And so I hope that people that listen to our podcast think about that. And so if they have a partner and if you stick together, then you can join a running club or something. And isn't that the key in the end, is you get out there with other people. And so that was what Greater Boston was to me. I thought my running was over. Patty, you had a different start, and Dan, you had a start.
I was there at BC. That was great. That's like the holy grail of running, and to see you with Alberto do the 30K on the track.
I went through a change at Providence when I was at Providence, Billy. I don't know if you remember this, but when I was down at Providence, there was a fire like after my sophomore, during the middle of my sophomore year, and they closed down the campus because four women died in one of the dormitory fires that was caused by Christmas decorations or something.
I didn't know
and so I left and I didn't go back to school that spring. I came up to Boston, lived with Vinny and Randy in Orkney Road. And that's when I never had a coach. My high school coach was a basketball coach who took the cross country job for supplemental income. And
Yeah.
then my college coach at Providence at the time was that guy, Bob Amato, who he had not a clue about running. We were basically being coached by John Tracy and the other Irish guys on the team who knew a lot about running because they were international stars before they even came to Providence. So I was pretty much being coached by those guys. But when I left and came up to Providence and started getting coached by Squires, he was my first real coach. And I learned so much. And of course I went from being an okay runner to winning the trials under what Squires started coaching me. I won the cross country trials down in Atlanta at age 20. So I had gone from being okay to by the time I was getting Squires.
Did you run with Jeff Smith?
Jeff came after I graduated, so I knew Jeff Smith really well. My younger brother Brian was still at Providence when Jeff was there because he was a couple of years behind me. So I used to still go down and train with my brother and with Jeff and those guys sometimes, because I was still friendly with all those guys.
Is Jeff Smith one of the most talented runners you ever met in your life? I think he was a phenomenal talent, and he had that English grit.
Yeah. Incredible range. Sub 4 minute miler, everything up to a marathon.
He's still the same way. He hasn't changed.
He hasn't changed. It's true. He's a character, but he is as a runner, as a racer. What he did at New York, we almost put Olympic bronze medalist Rod Dixon into the ground. He ran the gun in his first marathon.
That was great.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Jeff was a good guy to train with too. Another guy who didn't run too many slow days. I had a bunch of training partners who did not run very many slow days, and that really helped me a lot.
Seb would have people run with you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, run with Danny.
As my career started to wane, my job was to make sure that guys like Mark Coogan and Bob Kempinen would show up to the workouts and run hard. Those guys. I don't know if you remember this, but Nike Boston actually beat Athletics West. We were either young guys that hadn't made it yet on that Nike Boston team. Yeah, in national cross country championships. So national cross country championships, you either old like me who had already gotten rejected. Nike was done with you. You're too old now, so you can run on Nike Boston, but you don't get all you're going to get is free shoes. And then the young guys, up and comers, and then we had guys like Kempinen, and nobody had heard of Kempinen yet. Nobody had heard of Mark Coogan yet, and all these guys. So we went out there, and they had cut basically everybody at Pat Porter, and but if you weren't an Olympian, you weren't on Athletics West anymore because they cut everybody except for the people that had made the Olympic team in Athletics West. And we went to the national cross country and we beat them. It was very rewarding actually. Was
that when Greg Meyer won the title and just edged Alberto?
No, that was Seattle. That was a Greater Boston. That was when because Greg didn't run for Greater Boston that day, did he? I know Alberto was running for Oregon, but the following year was the year that we all came out, except for you, Bill. We missed you.
I was at Fukuoka.
Because we had the lowest. The following year we had the lowest score in the history of the National Cross Country Championships because Alberto won. I think Lindsay might have been set. Herb Lindsay was second. Haji was third. I was fourth. Greg Meyer was fifth. I think Randy might have been 12th. So we had our top five guys were all in the top 12 at nationals.
Yeah, I think the collegiate system in New England has had 100 years of power. It probably leaked out partially from the Boston Marathon, but also from the BAA indoor games, which went on for a long time. Don't you think that was part of the power of New England track and field and everything, and the coaches?
But I think also the people that gravitated to Boston because you were there, and because a lot of the other once it started becoming a mecca, like guys like Greg would move from Michigan and say, "Okay, this is a good place for me to hunker because I'm gonna get."
World cross country team, we convinced Greg to move to Boston. So come on, Greg played poker, and we convinced him. I think maybe we took some of his money, but he might have.
Well, I tell you, he was a good addition because he got us all to train hard. He was another good addition.
Another one to the wall.
But I mean, I just look at Boston. If you think about that team, we had 3 Olympians that were non-scorers on that cross country team. Bickford was on it. I think Mike Roach might have been on it. Pete Fitzinger was on it, and those were the non-scoring members of that cross country team.
And about Pete Fitzinger from upstate New York, who moved to the Boston area too, and became a two-time Olympic marathoner and even edged Alberto in the LA Olympic Marathon. So there's so much talent, but it's all that you're given a break. Does someone believe in you? And that's
Right.
Yeah, no,
goes
that's
for all
true.
of
And it's
us,
all
for
it was
everyone.
also the stable of guys like, and any given day, if you wanted to train by yourself, go right ahead. But if you wanted to make a couple of phone calls and go out and train with Bickford and
True.
go out and train with you and Randy, and people were always meeting at the store or whatever. You could always find a group of
That was great.
guys.
Great era. Meet at the store.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think what
Especially with
happened,
you, you'd always do the same run.
that's true. I was
You'd
going to
say,
go on.
say, hey, Patty, want to go for a run?
Commonwealth Beacon
Oh,
Street.
sure.
Commonwealth Beacon Street. Oh, you guys go. No. You guys would go
Jamaica
the
Plain.
Arboretum. You guys go down to Jamaica Pond and the Arboretum too.
That's-
To Jamaica
So
Pond.
he had two. He had two.
Like, it didn't matter.
What's the Boston Track Club look like these days? You have
Oh, it's not the
athletes?
same.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
With
not
with
like
so
the
much money
same.
in running, they can't. They're just an amateur club, like a local amateur club. But back then, there was no money yet. We all
Well,
when
BAA has the national 5K girl,
Right.
Sarah.
Yes.
right
The BAA
now
has money.
because
Yeah.
BA has money.
And Greater Boston, Tom Dadarian coaches.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
not money. There's no money for Greater Boston anymore. So it's a kind of
No.
a local club
There
now.
was really money
It's a good
then,
club.
was there?
There was no money then. Yeah, we all.
Money
That's why.
then.
That's why that national cross country meet was our last hurrah, and
And then all
And
you guys bumped
we
in
all-
rooms. You buy like 2 hotel rooms, and it's like 50 people in there.
That's true. We
Oh,
were
yeah.
all poor. We
Yeah.
were all poor. There was a
Yeah.
common
I ran
bond.
off of
And that's
I
the
ran off
way it was.
bologna sandwiches.
Yeah.
We were kind of like the Kenyans or Ethiopians might be today,
Yeah.
And I think when you're poor, you're really willing to work and work and work. And it's true for anybody or in any facet of life. But Ron, I'm sure you weren't a man of great wealth, and Benji, we didn't come from rich families or whatever. So I think in a way it's a good thing. It helped us.
What made us what we are, well, what we became.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
tried.
It kept us
and we
hungry.
had success. We were lucky, really.
It's like
Uh,
Schwarzenegger said, stay hungry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, really. Stay hungry.
So what about Elliot's Lounge, you Boston folks? I mean, was that popular only because of the Boston Marathon, or was it a local
Tommy
hangout
Leonard.
for you guys?
Tommy
I know
Leonard.
Tommy.
Free drinks.
Yeah, really.
What-
Tommy Leonard. I could go in there and stagger out and not spend a buck.
Yeah.
So was it like
But Patty didn't even drink then.
I didn't.
When she was running, she didn't drink.
No, when I was running, I didn't drink.
But-
It was after.
But
But
yeah, I
Tom
would.
was the heart. Wouldn't you say, Dan and Patty, that he was the heart and soul of, along with maybe Jock Semple and Will Cloney of the Boston area, and Bill Squires, Coach Squires.
Yeah.
of Boston.
Amen. Amen. Those guys were they were the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
true.
but it was all different, but they all blended together because you'd have Squires at the track, and then you'd have Squires at Elliott with Tommy Leonard with
Yep.
the
And
track
Joe Can-
people. Yeah,
But
and
there were small bit players that you don't even think about. Like I can remember that Greater Boston Track Club back in those days. I went to the Exchange Lounge once, and I had been invited to run, and I forget what is the Vitalis Invitational down in Madison Square Garden or one of those indoor track meets or something like that. And I didn't have the money to go. And I was sitting there, and Don Facey, I don't know if you remember Don Facey
Sure.
from Greater Boston Track, but he overheard me saying to Don Callahan, who was the bartender, I would go down and run in that 3,000 on the track there, but I just don't have the money. And he says, I had a car. He says, what do you need? Just gas money? And Don Facey he'd pull out his wallet and he goes, Danny, get your ass down there. You start
what it
giving me
was
a
like.
couple of $20 bills and say, go.
go.
But it was just like a little community of guys that were supporting each other.
And Tom Grelk would help.
Yeah. Tom.
Yeah, I remember.
I slept in Tom Grilk's downtown condo one year for I think it was his Freedom Trail.
Yeah.
Tom Grilk became the head,
Yeah,
the head of Boston Athletic
that was his
Association.
race. That was his race with
Yeah.
Tommy Leonard. They started that.
Yeah.
And Tommy, of course, started the Falmouth Road Race, which we all went down to in 1974. And Tommy was a Marine, and he was someone who he didn't grow up at home with his mom or something and dad. I think he was adopted by a family here in Massachusetts. There's a book about Tommy Leonard, and and Tommy, after he started at Falmouth and we had a Boston, went down to Falmouth, and Marty LaCour raced there, and I was lucky enough to edge him and everything. And that race on the ocean became this, I don't know, kind of a mecca, summertime mecca for us all to go to, you know. And Tommy said to me, Bill, do you know Frank Shorter? And I said, well, I know him sort of. I know who he is. So I wrote him a letter, and which the Falmouth Track Club still has. And I said, Frank, Tommy Leonard we all saw Frank win the Olympic gold medal. It was a turning point in American distance running, 1972, for the guys and the women too. But I think so Tommy got Frank to run Falmouth and everything. So I think here's a guy, a former Marine, a poor guy, ran Boston a bunch of times, never had money and everything, but he started Falmouth to give money to the Falmouth Girls Track Club. Today, it's 52 years old or something like that. It's still a great race and everything. Tommy's gone, but his memory's still there. But I think that's the story of our sport. All the people going on and on and on. You know, by the way, Dan, I almost went to Providence, but I saw your outdoor track where all you guys trained outdoors. There were no walls or a roof.
It was wooden.
No.
There was no our outdoor track. I had to run that. I think that's probably what made me so strong was I used to run because there was no decent track. That we had a wooden 11 lap to a mile track on the campus. If you wanted to run on the campus, you had to run on this crappy wooden track. Outdoors. 11 lap to a mile. It was
outdoors.
It was out. Ours was outdoors, but it simulated the boards that you would have to run on in Madison Square Garden.
Oh.
Yeah, it was built the same as that. It was built the same as that 11 lap to a mile track that they had in the indoor in Madison Square Garden. So we would, instead of running on that, after my freshman or sophomore year, I was like, I'm going to run down to Johnston High School because there's a high school that has an all-weather track. And it's 5 miles from here, but I'll run the 5 miles to warm up to get there, run my track workout, and then run 5 miles back to the campus. So I was doing these 2 hour and 15-minute runs my junior and senior year at Providence just to get a track workout in on a decent track because there was no track. There was no indoor track at the time.
We hope that you enjoyed what you heard. And if you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and share. And your support means everything. And until next time, embrace the journey and take care. Happy listening.